All right. We're here. Just going to give it a couple of minutes for to let people come in, and then we will.
Sure.
Right. Great. So I think we should start now.
Hey,
Uh, Hi, Samir. Thank you so much again for doing this. Um, and everyone else who's attending, hello. A couple of quick instructions for you guys to help you make the most out of the session. So at the bottom of your screen, you have a couple of options. You can use a chat feature. You have the Q&A where you can ask questions through the session. Don't hold back. Just keep typing. And you also have a raise hand where you can option where you can raise your hand and we'll probably get you on, unmute you so you can ask your question. But throughout the call, of course, most of you guys will be muted. Don't worry, you can send in your questions by clicking on that Q&A option. Right. So we'll also be putting out a couple of polls for just to know what your perspective is on different topics. So you can vote, and then we'll take the conversation in that direction, keeping what you've said in mind. Right. So make sure you do vote, guys. And yeah, just a quick introduction. I know a couple of people who've come here from the previous sessions, but I'm going to quickly introduce what we're doing today and myself. Hi, I'm Kevin. It's really nice to have you all online, and thank you again, Samir, for doing this. So, for the last 10 years, Worldview, we've worked towards curating learning experiences, as I was just telling Samir, all across the globe for Generation Z. We've done this out in the outdoors. So, and we've delivered these powerful and insightful experiences. We use tools like travel and conferences, outdoors, simulations, with all the ultimate aim of transforming Generation Z into a generation of solvers. We've always had, a key aspect of our programs. We've kept adaptive capacity at the core of it. So, and we've always believed that yeah, we've always wanted adaptive capacity to be at the core, and now that very adaptive capacity is being tested now more than ever. But we feel that you, the Generation Z, you have the ability to both impact your local and your global communities. So we decided, a global lockdown was not going to hold us back from facilitating your learning. So in this very pursuit, what we did was we put together our first ever completely digital initiative. This is very new for us. We rarely spend our time behind screens, but we're really excited and thank you so much for getting for you guys to come online. So we're calling the Gen Z Solvers Interactive, and the theme for season one is dialogues for the post-COVID-19 world. We have thinkers, we have dreamers, we have entrepreneurs, artists, and change makers, and they'll be sharing their powerful and inspiring stories on this platform through the series. And today we have Samir. Samir is an entrepreneur now who has worked at Wipro, Oracle, and then Yahoo. And he wants to settle in Coorg at his farm for a quiet village life in about 3 years. Is that right?
that's right.
Yeah. So he's recently co-founded Bee Forest, a farming company that wants to change how farms operate and how farming works with nature rather than against it. Right. So Samir, I made that introduction really quick so that we
Sure.
through the call. Again, thank you for doing this.
Pleasure.
Yeah, we'd really like to have a good session with you. And so
Absolutely. Look forward to it.
quick, quick intro. You tell us. Be Forest, Samir. Go ahead.
So I'm going to run through the presentation, and I do talk about what I've been doing in the last few years and prior to that as well.
Yeah.
And more interestingly, how these changes have come about and the thought process behind them. But so I'm going to take this opportunity because I do this with my kids a lot, and I like to apologize to the Gen Z a lot because a lot of how the world is today is a mess created by our generations, right? So we owe it to them to at least kick off the changes that'll make things better for them.
Okay. Right. So, would you like telling us? I mean, how did this all start? How did before it start? Where did it begin? What was the idea behind it, and how did it suddenly come to be? And especially from a career in tech and suddenly switching back, switching to, I would say, to
Yeah,
a company like Forest. They're so different from each other.
yeah. So it's a quest of well, actually, I mean, if you're okay with that, we just go through the slides because
Sure, sure.
I actually talk about this in depth, right?
Great,
And it's been a journey of questions in some sense.
great. So let's go to the slides right away then.
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah. So should I go ahead and share?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I'll do that. All righty. Yep. So hi everyone who's listening. Um, so I've been an entrepreneur since 2005. Before that, I was working at Yahoo, like Kevin described. Before that, so Yahoo was a fair bit of search engines and stuff like that. Before that, I was at Oracle doing databases, compilers, and a lot of geeky stuff in my past life. I actually filed patents and um, had a lot of conventional success on that. But over time, the entrepreneurship bug bit me, and the quest for doing more, um, having a bigger impact, learning as I went along, and that kept happening to a higher and higher degree, and that's what the journey's been about. So these are the this is these logos are of the companies that I've started in the past. The first one is a Z. It was a mobile search company. Linger is a hospitality venture that I still run, and B Forest for the farm was the farming venture that Kevin talked about. Ziva started in 2005. These were the early years of entrepreneurship in India. None of you will recognize that phone in the picture there. That used to be a smartphone. And it was pretty expensive then, and I think that phone lasted 8 years with me, with the original battery intact. It was a pretty modern phone at that point of time. Yes, it has a keyboard.
Samir is old. He's just stated that fact.
Very, yes. So yeah, this was mobile search before smartphones became a thing. We actually raised a lot of funding. We was selected by IM for their incubation program. So we had that cool stamp and all of that. We created a lot of IP. We did a lot of R&D. We were the cool cats in this entire space, right? We never figured out how to sell this stuff. We were all engineers, and I eventually started quitting the company. My co-founders continued for a bit when we didn't really get anywhere in the market, and we started going into a service mode. As I was quitting that, Linger started almost as an accident because I was actually building a house. But by that time, I knew that I wanted to retire in a small place and have a small house in the village, in a green part of the country.
Why though? Like, why that? Uh,
Uh,
leaping?
yeah, we'd grown up. I've grown up in a town called Jamshedpur, and it was fairly green while it was industrial.
Hmm,
And Bangalore was already getting too big and too boisterous for me.
okay.
So, so yeah, wanted a quieter life for sure. Right.
Okay.
I've always been a little bit of a nature lover,
All right.
right? And I wanted to commit to that. It's not something I want to do over weekends, as an aside. So yeah, so as we were building the house, a few friends came over, and they actually liked what they saw. When the house was not ready, we didn't have windows, we didn't have a floor, we didn't have a kitchen. So we realized, very often you go to see places as they are, and when you do it through this interface of a resort or a very um, upmarket experience, that usually gets in the way of you experiencing the place. So we said hospitality needs to just, India is a really hospitable country. There's rich culture, rich food, rich experiences in every village outside the big cities, and that's what we need to showcase. So that journey took off like that. We are at about 15 locations right now. We were planning to go to 30. We have a nice growth plan, all planned out, but then this hit, and we've completely locked down right now with absolutely zero business for the last month and a half. So yeah, we are a slightly differently done startup in the travel space. We are not an aggregator. We actually are involved in all the properties we run. We know all the caretakers by name. We know a lot of the neighbors by name. Uh, we are very high touch. You cannot go ahead and do an online booking on our website. You have to send us a mail. You have to talk to us, and we have to know you before you get there.
I mean, in this day and age, why
Mhm.
did you choose to do that? Why did you choose to still keep it on email? Why do you want people to call you up and ask you, questions about Kalinga and or write to you as well?
Primarily because we want to set expectations right. Uh, because of the nature of what we do, it's not the mainstream market. It is getting more and more popular, but it's not yet everybody's cup of tea. And if people turn up at these places with a different set of expectations, it's bad for them. It's really bad for the staff there, because they are left with a fairly negative impression of the folks coming in from the city, and
Okay.
it's just not a good marriage. And we believe that travel is a handshake. It's not a consumer product.
Hmm.
There is a certain responsibility you carry as a traveler.
Yeah.
So we like having this conversation through the emails that we send out, all the communication that we send out, and in some sense, let people know what they're getting into. And a lot of people just fall in love with this, and a lot of people just stay away and get spooked, and we're fine with that. We're not trying to appeal to everybody, for sure.
So tell us a little more about Bee Forest, how that came to be, and
Yeah,
what
yeah.
is
So
Bee?
Linga, as a contrast to my previous startup, is not a high growth startup. It is a healthy startup, and here the service mode is something that actually appealed to me. So I quit the previous one because it went into the service mode from being a product company, and we finally realized delivering great service was having a lot more real impact on the ground.
Okay.
So that was a learning there. Did a whole bunch of other things. I'm a product manager by profession in my earlier life, so I helped out a bunch of startups. I ran this thing called the Tour of Nilgiris. It's a cycling tour. Um, as part of all of this, I met a whole bunch of people, studied a whole bunch of problems at Linger, saw rural India uh, up front and close for the first time in my life. Started to understand. I won't claim that I understand everything very well, because it takes a life to understand a complex place like India. But I started to understand and identify with a bunch of problems I saw in the village, a bunch of problems I saw in how the economy had gotten constructed across the village and the city, and what impact it was having. So we decided to actually do something about it. A bunch of friends have been talking about living better, growing food better, and all of that for a while now. So in 2017, we actually got together and bought out a larger piece of land, and designed it as a single farm. Right. So the picture you see on the right is an artist's impression of a farm like that.
Okay.
Right, which actually looks like a forest.
Yeah, it doesn't look like the farms that we
Yeah,
see, in
it's
rural India right now.
so forests are actually the most productive ecosystems in the world. right? If I talk to you about lush and green and um, you know beautiful, if I use all these adjectives, places like the Amazon come to your mind,
Hmm.
and the amount of food the Amazon produces far outdoes any farm on the planet, right? A forest system is, and nobody has to water it, nobody has to add fertilizer to it, nobody has to keep tending to it, and if you just stop destroying it, it'll take care of itself for the next 10,000 years flat, right? In fact, it gives back. The Indian monsoon sources a lot of its moisture to the Amazon, right? A lot of species, but by itself, the forest not only supports a lot of life, it also keeps growing.
Yeah.
It grows itself and it keeps growing all the life that depends on it. And that's a beautiful ecosystem. Unlike our farm ecosystems today, which basically extract from the land, get them down to the level of a desert, and we have to start the cycle all over again with each crop, right? So
So,
we started creating this farm, and we found that there was a lot of interest in it. A lot of people came together and said, yeah, we want to be part of this too. So very soon we were at 50 people, a large 75-acre farm, and that's when Bee Forest formally got set up. We said, okay, this needs to be done. We need to create many such farms, and we need to do this for a lot of people.
so did
So
you start off with the idea that you're going to, like, when you and your couple of friends, you
mhm.
decided to buy that piece of land? Did you have Bee Forest in mind in some form or the other, or was it just because you guys just wanted to buy a piece of land and farm on it?
It was a one-off experiment. We didn't know how deep and big it would be. We didn't know that a lot of people would actually be interested in it.
All right.
We were about 20 to start with, but I think there's hundreds of people who want to get involved in rejuvenating the land and living better, in having food security, water security, and it's an alternative to how we live in the city today.
Okay.
It's actually an alternative to how the city could have been.
Okay. So tell me this: like, I walk into a Bay Forest farm.
Mhm.
What do I see at the farm?
Yeah. So you see the pic out there, right? You will have a bunch of houses in a corner somewhere.
Okay.
75-80% of the farm will be trees.
Okay.
It'll be very very forested, very diverse. It'll have like thousands of species of flora and fauna both.
So how many acres is this again? Let's say, for example, what's the acreage of one Bee Forest farm for
The first one sits on about 100 acres of land.
100 acres of land? Okay.
Yeah,
So I
it's on a
walk,
it,
and
it,
there's
it
big.
was a degraded hill slope,
Okay.
and it's been rejuvenated over the last 3 years. We first held the water. We started work on soil improvement. We started doing a lot of planting to enable all these processes to happen.
Okay.
What we define as fertility and water availability are actually processes. They are not point in time measurements, right? So
Okay.
we've actually managed to lose these processes over time because of our approaches to farming, our approaches to how we look at living around nature.
Okay.
So
So
yeah.
you, I mean, it's great. Like, I walk into a bee forest farm. I find it amazing. I see the forest. I see the houses.
Mhm.
Let's say I am. Let's say I become a customer of bee forest. So I get a piece of land to myself, and then I get to use that piece of land. I get the produce of it. But I'd like to know, what's the problem you are solving. I mean, what do you think? I'm sure that before you started off with your friends, that you probably saw
Mhm.
a problem that probably you had, not someone else, a problem that you had, and you solved it is in some fashion. So what's the problem that you're solving, and how are you solving it?
See, the core problem of how we are farming,
Okay.
right? That's what we're really solving. I mean, there's a bunch of ancillary benefits that this creates. The core problem is of how we farm today, right? We are actually battling nature all the time. We
Mhm.
need to do more pest control. Our inputs are growing. The soil is degrading. The water tables are dropping, and the farmers don't have enough to eat, which is actually preposterous for a grower to not have enough nutrition, not have enough diversity in their food, and all of that, because they're growing for the market in a certain way, right? An ecosystem like this ecosystem will be 70% edible,
Wow. Okay.
right? and it'll happen on 7 layers. Like in a forest, you will see things from under the soil, which is at the root level, to small shrubs, to small trees, to larger trees, to the canopies, the trees which form the canopy above the forest, the climbers, the creepers, and all of that, right? So it's and our farms are largely two-dimensional, right?
Hmm.
So you go from these two dimensions to seven layers of uh, production, basically. So it not only supports you, it supports a lot of life. And we know that our ecosystems are a function of how diverse, if the bees collapse, our crops will collapse. If the birds, as the birds disappear, our farming systems do come under stress. As the trees disappear, our water is disappearing, right? So all of these are interconnected loops. So you start fixing a few parts of the loops that exist in a natural ecosystem, and the rest starts to form around it, right? These are complex loops in nature. So we're just assisting nature to recover in some sense. And
Okay.
it starts like we in a very very dry place, we are already pretty water sufficient. We need very little water for a farm right now. So this myth of, oh, there isn't enough water for farming anymore, we don't have a bowel, all of those myths have gotten created over time. So the idea was to challenge how farming is done today, right,
Oh,
with
so
the
who?
idea of food forests. And the second is the idea of a community, right, which looks at this entire set of micro farms owned individually as one farm, and thinks of the commons. So if we need like a 5 acre forested patch, it could sit on your land, it could sit on my land, but we have to understand that it benefits everybody,
That's where the
right?
word
So if
collective
there
comes
is
in.
if there is a large park, yes, that's where the word collective comes in.
Could you tell our attendees what you mean by a collective? Maybe.
So it's a collective because it's this sort of a food forest is best planned on a large piece of land, and it's not possible for everyone to buy a large piece of land, right? Uh, so a lot of people come together, essentially pool in and buy it together. Think of it as one farm, work on it together, plan it together. There are more heads working on it, more hands available to work on it, more ideas, more checks and balances, as it were. Right? You run out of enthusiasm lesser because we actually studied about 15 farms before we started this, and we
Okay.
realized that most people who bought these individual farms eventually give up on it, and the farm goes into a limp mode and is just like a piece of real estate lying there, not doing anything useful, right?
Okay.
Whereas at our farms, we have actually seen the enthusiasm grow over time. People actually want to go and work there, want to get involved in the planning and the execution and the ideation for it and all of that.
So let's
So
say, I mean,
there's a massive benefit, yeah, doing it as a collective.
right, so let's say you have
Yeah,
kids,
you were
right?
saying.
From what you told me this morning when we discussed, you do have
Mhm.
kids. So if I go to one of your kids and I ask him,
Yeah,
what does
yeah,
dad
yeah.
do? Uh, what would his or her answer be?
I am not sure I want to know the
Oh,
answer.
and
If you ask them in
that's
private.
good. I want to know. Would they say my dad's a
Yeah,
farmer?
but yeah, they actually talk about both things. They've been to a lot of the linga locations, so they associate very closely with that. And they have been to the farm. They know that they understand what we are trying to do at the farm very very well. They've been to the farms. They've worked there. So yeah, they will I think identify me with both of these efforts.
Just to get a perspective, what's your kid's
Mhm.
favorite thing at the farm? At any one of your farms, what is
Uh,
the thing?
for my daughter, it would be the pets, the dogs and the cats and the you know the
I think
animals at the farm.
my favorite too.
I'm sorry.
I think yeah, the pets would be one of my favorites too, for sure, 100%.
Yeah, Yeah, and it's very nice to see dogs who actually grow up in apartments come and stretch their legs there and run around, and even they enjoy the open spaces there.
Do you think your
Yeah.
kids, are like from the way you're talking about farming, is you really like it, right? I can see your eyes glimmer when you're talking about farming, and especially we had a discussion about soil before this, which I'm going to get to. You're really excited
Mhm.
about it. So, are you trying to make farming cool again? Like, is that at least what your kids think? Are you trying to make farming cool again? Do you want more people to take up farming because it's also cool?
I think it's cool because it's what formed the planet, right? It's fascinating once you start understanding. Like I keep telling people, the most interesting journey is the 10 inches into soil, and it can take you a lifetime. Yeah, it's it's full of fascinating facts. Like for one, if you're in a very rich forest, below footprint, you have 3 kilometers of roots and fungal networks and all sorts of um, you can basically lay it out for 3 kilometers. That's how rich it is in a good that's how rich good soil is, and that's how productive natural systems can be, and that's what really created the planet over rock, right? That these processes, and if you have a slightly scientific mind, if you understand, if you love understanding nature, if you love seeing the interconnects, it's very fulfilling in some sense, because it's life. It's you know if I told you that your work every day is actually improving the condition of every square foot that you work on, it's improving the condition of every living being and every human being that you're coming in contact with in that work. Wouldn't that be just amazing? Most of our work, the fact that I'm using this laptop and a Wi-Fi connection, it actually harms somebody or something out there today. There is there is some damage getting being caused by most work that we do in most contexts, right?
So,
But soil building is very, very different.
just
Yeah.
to all the entrepreneurs out there who are watching this show and who will watch this in the future as well, um, the way you're talking about what you do, the way you're talking about the things that you do and the things that you're part of, the way you're talking about the initiative, how important is that kind of passion and that kind of belief in what you do important for you to start something and to keep a company going or to keep a community going? How important do you think is that passion and that that craziness that you need to do something like this, to get out and do something different?
So if I'm candid about it, and this I call it the first slide because it's the only slide that matters. Uh, uh, my first startup was actually about something that was how should I say, hot in the market, right? Mobile search.
Yeah.
It would get funded. It was around a bunch of very cool and very with it buzzwords. It would get VC attention, so we got funded and all of that.
Wait, I'm going to stop you right there. You said VC attention. I'm going to make you break that down and say, what is a VC?
A VC is a venture capitalist. So when we created our first tech startup in the mobile search space,
Are
we
they VC
needed to
guys?
hire engineers and all of that. So we need to raise money.
Yeah. Right. You
Yeah.
can. Yeah.
So we picked an idea based on these attributes, not on how much we cared about it, right? Not how much we saw an impact on people
Yeah.
from it. So I think part of the reason we could not make a difference in the market out there was that, and
Hmm.
you will see that too with a lot of startups, which do have a lot of them do flourish for a couple of years. They may even reach crazy valuations based on the games played, but there is no how should I say, there's no core belief in what you're doing, right? You're deciding on whether it's hot in the market. Similarly, market research. If a market, if research tells you, like what market research did the Wright brothers have before they invented flying.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, market research would have put them on a different track and said, hey, you know what? There is no market in this. Nobody wants to fly. What the hell are you saying?
True.
Right? So similarly, you hear about, oh, this is a scale. This business has scale, but that's a lifestyle business. Linger is a lifestyle business by most VC definitions. The agricultural stuff could have scale of a different kind, right? But those are not the considerations that as I matured as an entrepreneur, those considerations were not at the top of my head, right? The same thing with about being funded, or like most um, startups and most entrepreneurs today immediately get down to the funding question. But that's not the end goal of why you're doing a startup. It's a core idea somewhere. It's an idea you really care about. It's an impact that you really care about. It's what you want to do, right? So if you need funding for it for a logical reasons, yes, by all means funding is important, but it's a tool. It's a tool, like you use a laptop and you use WordPress and you use any set of technologies. It's how at the farm we use a bunch of tools. At the farm we need to buy a bunch of things. Funding is a need like that. It's not the reason to be an entrepreneur. And same thing with using tech or not using tech, right? The decision to, just because I was from the tech background, I did not by default choose uh, a tech platform for Linker for our reservations. We are not trying to be cool in a tech way or appeal to what the magazines
Yeah, sure. I
talk
mean,
about already.
I'm sure you've nailed down the mistakes you made probably, or the things that where you probably went wrong with your earlier startup.
Yes.
But I'm sure at BeForest you probably made a couple of mistakes right in the beginning. Would you want to share, what those mistakes were and how you probably corrected it, or how you probably wanted to slightly do it differently, or were you on like a perfect track? You can say that too.
No. So the goals and the impact got refined a lot, and at each stage, the quest was more about what more impact can I have, right? Like in my tech avatar, most of the code I wrote, for instance, doesn't run right now. It's all dead. I made some money off it, but it didn't really go anywhere. So right now, the way I look at mistakes is that I make mistakes every day, right?
Hmm.
And it's important to make those mistakes every day, because that's when you think about it tomorrow, and that's when you think about what else do I need to, and what else do I need to change, and who else do I need to learn from.
For so many years, you probably, like, I don't know, from your childhood, through college, you were probably going towards the tech side, right?
Hmm.
Doing well, you were getting places, you also started up.
Hmm.
For you to suddenly change to something, I would say, highly contrasting, to do something completely different, does it make you think, hey, wait, like, for so many years I've done something else and I'm suddenly doing this now? I'm sure, like, I've had that question in my mind for so many times that in my past. So I want to know your perspective of it. What do you tell yourself at that point of time, or what would you tell people if they ask you that question?
um, I've personally always found myself questioning my comfort zones. So if I get boxed into a comfort zone, I get a little uncomfortable about it.
That's a good thing to have.
So that probably helped. But the question, I mean, it was not along the dimension of here's what I know how to do, here's what I've been doing, let me build on top of that. It was not about that.
Okay.
Uh, even in tech, I realized that I had started to connect the dots in problems that I saw, right? And that skill transcends tech itself. Like I said, tech is a tool. In if you're in construction, you use bricks. In software, you write code, right? But it's finally a problem you're solving for somebody,
Right.
right? The scale of the problem, the kind of problem, if that fascinates you, if that's what interests you, the tool can change, right?
Okay.
So that the tool is not the important thing. So in my case, the quest was more about the impact, really,
Okay.
right? What impact? Um, like I said earlier, legacy is too heavy a word. I hesitate to use legacy,
Hmm.
but what am I leaving behind in the world? Who's life or whose lives have I changed in any sort of permanent way? If I plant a couple of hundred trees today, for sure the next generation is going to benefit in a small way somewhere because uh, those couple of hundred trees are still around, right?
Especially this day and age, people want to move. They want to move quick. They
Hmm.
want to see quick benefits. I mean, that's how every day in the news you see, okay, so and so, company funded so and so money, and it's always quick. Uh, what's your idea of leaving? Like you were just talking about it. Why is it so important for you to leave something that lasts long? Why is it so important for you to, you're scared of using the word legacy, but I'll go ahead and use it.
Hmm.
Why why is it that you're so worried about leaving a legacy on the planet to the world?
I will leave the idea of legacy to greats like J.N. Tata, right? It's too big a word for small folks like us. But yeah, one realizes that one grew up in an economy which was very extractive. And right at the beginning, I actually said sorry to Gen Z, right? In a certain way, because we set the world on a track and we messed things up, in a way that um, they're facing a lot of issues, and they'll have to solve a lot of problems that we created, right? So and we benefited from a whole bunch of things, including in tech, that our previous generation actually created, uh, not thinking of the short term, right? When you eat fruit from a tree which is 30 years old, the guy who planted it isn't probably benefiting from it right now. And when you drink the water from a river, which old ficuses in the forest are holding and slowly releasing, that happens over generations. So a lot is actually built like that on the planet. And our generation, for a couple of generations now, we kind of forgot that. And I think it's important to remember that, and try bring a balance to, yes, I need to make a living, and I need to have a good life, and I need to have a business going. But can I also do it while accounting for the next generation, and accounting for, like I said, if I rebuild soil, everybody connected to that soil benefits,
Yeah.
right? So why, if I have the opportunity to do something like that, why wouldn't I? Why
Yes.
wouldn't I actually create positive impact over time and across people, and across you know all living ecosystems? So over time, the idea of what impact I wanted to have actually expanded, and that's what led from tech, which was fairly inward looking, and my goals and my wins and my battles, to linger, where somebody who actually travels to a place like this starts appreciating it. People called in and said, you know what, my kids, for the first time, they actually came across spiders, and they actually not scared of them anymore. And that's a huge win, right?
It is.
Somebody
Yeah.
appreciating birds, somebody appreciating nature, um, starting to travel differently because of that. And then from there to this, where you're actually creating forests. It's
I
just
mean, correct me if this statement is wrong,
uh,
the way you put it. So if you're giving an advice to an entrepreneur who's just, Gen Z entrepreneur who wants to start up,
mhm.
you would advise that they first start solving a problem, as the beginning of the startup, rather than saying, what am I going to get out of this if I solve that? Would
Yep.
that?
Um, yeah. So you've heard of you've probably seen the Ikigai map, right? I'm sure somebody or the
You
other
want to
has
put it
referred to
up
that.
again? That your presentation, your ikigai on slide. Do you want to put it up?
No, that's all right. I mean, I'm sure it's done to death. I mean, a lot of people would have presented it, and a lot of people will have read about this. But what does it really mean, right? Uh, because it's a Venn diagram with a lot of different pieces to it. But I think at its core, if you do identify the problem and then see if there is an intersection with, so if it cannot become your profession, then it's a great hobby. You can still pursue it,
Hmm.
right? If it can become a profession, if it can become a startup, a business idea, and so on and so forth, right? It gives you a path to doing it well and at scale, and living off it and doing it full time and so on and so forth. But having these goals is important, because at the end of it, yes, the uh, everybody has a 5 or 7 year period where you flourish, where you really flourish, right? And everybody finds that 5 or 7 year period at some point of life or the other.
Have
But
you
but what is I'm
have you
sorry.
have you found your 5 or 7 year period yet, or is it yet to
I mean,
come?
for our generation, it was fairly easy. We got very lucky. The IT boom was happening. A lot of the right place, right time events happened to us. Not particularly for any reasons that we can take credit for, but it just happened.
You actually very interesting. You mentioned that the earlier generation has created a lot of problems,
uh
and you left a lot of problems to solve. Ironic. So in my intro, that's what I spoke about. We're here to convert this Generation Z. We want them to be a generation of solve. We actually think they are a generation of solvers
they will.
because there's
I don't think.
problems all around and they're solving them.
Unfortunately, I don't even think they will have a choice. I know. I,
They
I,
should
I,
find
I
opportunity out of it, though,
I
and
think.
that's what we're trying to do for them to
Yeah.
see.
So now, whether we are forced into solving these, or whether we proactively pick methods in which we can solve these problems, and also figure out that what our lives and our economics and our professions can actually revolve around this.
Right. So I'm actually going. There are a couple of questions that have come in. This was one of my question as well.
Yeah, sure.
So someone Shyam said, hi Samir. Uh,
Asia.
the assumption of of a post COVID-19 right now, the
Mhm.
situation is, he says that a lot of people might go back to rural and agricultural activities. It might inspire a lot of people to start, like we discussed this morning. 60 days can do 60, 70 days can do a lot of, a lot of introspection can happen, and
Yep. Yep.
proper boost, especially the youth and the younger ones, to think back and see what, go back to rural and agricultural activities. But how is this, how does this affect your business per se, and what uh deforest, especially, how do you guys come into the specific thing?
It's
Is it
like this. It's aligned to my goals for sure, right? If part of the goals is to this massive difference we have created in the village and the city needs to reduce. A village needs to get a lot sexier. A village needs to be a lot more attractive for a lot of people. uh, the village used to have art and craft and culture and songs and everything else, right? Today, it all exists in the city and very little exists in the village. We have actually vacuum cleaned the villages out of nutrients, out of soil, out of water, out of, and we kind of um, hoarded it all in the city in some sense. And that's true for poetry festivals. That's true for music. That's true for you know creativity and everything else. So why shouldn't a village have a design school?
yeah, why not?
Right? I mean, there's already better data connectivity in the village today. Right?
I'm pretty sure it's better than Bangalore sometimes, and I'm ready to argue about that.
Yeah, most of the time, because there's very little contention. So when I'm out there, a regular, uh, 4G connection works brilliantly.
Right. So someone also said, an anonymous attendee, a very Gen Z like question.
Mhm.
Do you see this business grow like how McDonald's did? So they started buying land when they started expanding. So do you see, before us doing that too, do you see expanding in that way?
Mm, I'm curious what it exactly means to be McDonald's.
But you could probably answer the fact of how quick you're going to expand and what's going to allow you to expand by making these smaller communities across the country and across the globe. Is that the idea, and
So
how?
our idea is not to actually trade in land. That's not what we are trying to do. We have to create collectives right now, because the people who have the money in the city are the ones who can afford to wait the 4 or 5 years it takes to turn around land,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Farmers' future is very, very linked to the next crop. If that fails, most farmers are dead, right? Most small marginal farmers are dead. They can't afford to wait for this transformation. And this transformation is super critical for all of us. If this transformation fails, I mean, we have, by some estimates, we have not more than 50 cycles left in the crop, in the soil across the world, right? And that's a very scary number. Right? So we have to affect this transformation one way or the other. So the villages have to improve, the soil has to improve. So we are ready to work. We're not married to the idea of creating collectives and all of that. If a village wants to come together as a collective, we will help it actually improve. We will actually help manage the process. We will actually help productize, add value to a lot of products at the farm and at the village itself. uh, create markets for it around and in the city, and so on and so forth. So we're not married to this idea of creating collectives for and selling land. That's not the core of it. So because we are flexible on this, as this core need of uh, wanting to fix soil, wanting to fix ecosystems, and that takes root.
Mm.
And in a country like New Zealand, it's already reality. 3 or 4 days ago, they announced a $1 billion fund to basically fix nature. They said, you know what, our country depends on this, our tourism depends on this, we live off the natural resources. So as an economic revival package, they are actually going to spend money on jobs and ideas and skills and projects which basically help restore and improve our natural resources. And that's
Uh,
mind blowing. That's right up our alley, because um, we then are a player in this. We already understand, starting to understand this. So understanding this process and understanding how this happens is our real IP in this whole thing. It's not trading on land.
okay, one last question. So, you know, businesses are challenged with startups are challenged with so many things at so many different points of time. Sometimes it could be just not having enough people on board, probably all of those challenges. But a lot of businesses today, both young ones and olds, are facing a massive challenge, especially with COVID-19 and this particular situation. Uh, I hopefully for that hopefully this doesn't happen again, but things like this are going to come up. They're going to happen in the future. How does a business?
Yep.
I know there's no textbook about it. I know there's no answer written it somewhere. But what do you think? How, let's say, how would BeForest do this? How would you adapt to this situation? What's your game plan going to be? Just about, and yeah, if you answer that question, that would be great.
Yeah. So business, like there's this book called Anti-Fragile. It's beautiful, actually. Uh, it's a recommended read for anybody who's developing systems thinking, right? And the planet is a very complex system. We need to understand that. So a business like Bee Forest, because of the goals and the intent and the spaces we are working in, is actually anti-fragile in this respect. These disruptions are actually going to be uh, opportunities for us, right? Because we will need to reorganize. We were an outlier till 2 months ago, and right now a lot of people are starting to think about it. So we will not be this outlier need anymore, right? Um, a lot of governments have already started thinking about building more resilience in their food chains and all of that. I hope we also start thinking about, things like New Zealand has already allotted money to. So as that happens, we are in a good place. But yeah, Linger, for instance, completely shut down in March, right? Because travel is dead. Um, so it's also about building the right company culture. It's about building. There's this term called the cockroach startup, and folks who are trying to be entrepreneurs should think about it. How do you become less fragile? So there's also this thought that the most successful startup is the one that survived at the end, right? Because you can have a flash in the pan, you can have $1 billion valuation and then disappear off the face of the map. Yes, a couple of people will make money, but overall, what did the startup do? And we know a whole bunch of startups like that. So uh, so the survivability is a very big one. It's very dependent on the company culture. I don't think there's been enough innovation in how our working models, our business models, our funding models have happened. We've innovated on the product and we've innovated on the ideas, but not enough on structuring these things. For
Hmm.
instance, Amul was a huge um, innovation on how a company can get created.
Yeah.
right? We have not done that enough for in the startup space, honestly, right? Why do we have to go to a VC for funding? Not everything is VC fundable. There are other methods of funding business ideas, right? Including customers. Customers provide great funding if you have the right idea. Similarly, like at Linger, for instance, the moment this happened, the team actually came forward and said, you know what, we want to suspend salaries. I didn't have to ask that question, right? And we figured out amongst ourselves that a couple of people needed the help, and we will continue to help them. And it happened voluntarily. We didn't have to do anything. Everybody's still working. Everybody's still, reaching out to customers and keeping the communication going. And people voluntarily did that. So it's
That's
about building the right culture. It's about building the right motivations for why you're creating a business. It's about innovation in the model itself, right? So I don't see it as a binary. Yes, if you've taken a lot of funding, if you depend on a lot of cash flow to meet certain targets beyond which you will not be able to sustain and all of that, there will be pressures, obviously. But um, I mean, you will in the same time you will see businesses that thrive, the businesses that come out of this much stronger. So there's no one answer to it, to be honest.
great. Thank you so much for
Hey,
answering all those. I know there are a lot of questions, but yeah, are there any last thoughts that you'd like to, that you'd like to leave the audience with, especially either around Bee Forest or your idea of, how passion is that important or solving a problem? What's going to be your last word, and then we'll probably end the session after that.
sure. So yeah, so for me, the journey is about the goals at both at a personal level and what I think are important goals for us as a collective, as humanity, as my family, and as a larger set of people to have. And each startup, each idea is just a vehicle to explore those goals further and deeper, right? There is no saying that Linga was not the last idea. The collective that started was not Bee Forest. Eventually, Bee Forest happened, and there is no saying what will happen today or tomorrow, right? Big, hairy, audacious is used in the startup world very often to chase billion-dollar ideas and create a unicorn. I think a unicorn is a mythical character, by the way. You can create very, very real things with big, hairy, audacious goals, right? We can be big, hairy, and audacious about making sure what New Zealand has done is big, hairy, and audacious. It is ridiculous to imagine that yeah, they can create a $1 billion economy which is not fossil fuel based primarily and which is not extractive, right? So it's an ongoing journey. I think arriving at goals, the goals and that quest builds upon itself, right? And each step is a learning process. Each step actually helps you get to the next one, and it's very, very satisfying, whatever the outcome. So there is the monetary outcome is one aspect of it, but there's a whole lot of other earnings on the way. And I think, I mean, I'm probably thrice the age of most listeners right now.
Interestingly, because you you just said that you're twice the age, we've got a couple of comments that you do look like Farhan Akhtar, and they were asking if you sing.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Somebody just made my day. Thank you.
yeah. I think someone said you do look like Farhan Akhtar. Someone said you look like Raghuram Rajan. So yeah, the names are coming in.
Oh, all right. Okay.
But
Please
again,
hashtag me on that. I'm going to get popular and famous. Yeah.
right. But again, thank you so much
Hey,
for
my
the
pleasure.
knowledge you shared with all of us, and this was great. It was a great conversation for us to have. And yeah, we're going to take back a lot personally as well. Right. So for everyone who's watching, thank you for coming. You have the screen on top of you. You can continue this conversation both on using the hashtag Gen Z Swallows and hashtag Swallows Interactive. Right.
You, you
Again,
could you could share my mail ID and my whatever if anybody wants to reach out.
right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. If you could
So
just um, give us your email ID. I'm going to send it out to all the attendees as well.
Sure, we'll do that.
Or you could just say it out actually.
I had a slide there somewhere.
Okay.
So yeah, I'll just, yep. Yeah, there you go.
Yes.
So all those coordinates work. Feel free to WhatsApp me and email me if you have any questions of any sort. I'm always,
Any questions, or if you think Samir looks like another celebrity, please let him know. Makes him
yeah,
happy.
yeah. And I can sing, but I don't know if you'd like to listen to it.
We'll probably do that on another session.
Yeah.
But again, thank you everyone. Thank you for coming,
Thanks,
and yeah,
Kiran. Thanks a lot.
in the other sessions. And again, thank you, Samir. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
All right.